when you do something new and it's hard, it's even more frustrating because you're like, wait, I'm used to being good at my thing. So how do you decipher whether it's a good idea or a God idea?
It's a really cool question. I think that even Eat the Frog was a God idea, and here's why.
What you're building isn't just a brand, it's the work and story God trusted you to carry. Welcome to Heard in Heaven. I'm Ray Ireland, best-selling author, global speaker, and co-founder of Evolve Podcasting, where our clients have reached over 3 million downloads. This show is where Holy Spirit revelation meets CEO execution. So your message doesn't just inspire, it multiplies. It's time to speak with fire, shake the earth, and be heard in heaven. If you have ever been that person that has walked through a failure, or maybe you're even going through something that feels super challenging, you're wondering, why is God even leading me through this? Then this show is going to be for you. We have an incredible guest, Maica Peterson here, who's going to be talking about her story of not abandoning herself in hard times, in times where things may have looked like they were falling apart. She actually stood strong and really showed her community what true leadership was all about. She was the co-founder of Choose Fitness in 2008, then ended up opening up her local franchise, Eat the Frog, and she's now the founder of the Salty Goddess Network here in San Diego. Stay tuned, and you're going to want to hear this episode and all the things that she had to walk through, some incredible imagery, and you're going to be inspired leaving here today. So Maica, thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being a part of my life. I'm so grateful to have you here.
Well, thank you, Ray. That was a beautiful introduction, and I am more than honored to be here and a part of what you are building. You're a special person in my life, like you said, and it is very much an honor. So thank you.
Oh, you're so sweet. If you want to just share, about that journey, and you really are coming here as the founder of Salty Goddess Network, which is, this beautiful community and movement that you're building based in San Diego, and it will be going abroad. We're declaring it right now, and there's new connections being formed. But can you share a little bit about that, the listening that you needed to do to hear God and to understand when you needed to take new direction? So maybe you can share about the beginning of, founding Choose Fitness and what that looked like, and then your story from there.
Okay. Well, the listening part almost made me emotional because that's kind of where the magic happens, is when you get curious. But yes, I'll back up. Is to Choose Fitness in 2008. My husband and my two brothers. My brother had just gotten out of the Marine Corps, and my godbrother were kind of looking to start something and hadn't been in the fitness industry ever before. But my dad had restaurant experience, and my godfather, they had built out some restaurants called Super Salads back in the 70s. And so they knew how to do business and were willing to sort of pour into us as the next generation of leaders. And so Choose started in 2008. And today they're actually in the process of going to market kind of as we speak. So those things are sort of happening. That's not private information. That's company wide. Everybody knows that that's sort of the intention right now. So it's pretty cool. There's 60 locations, and it's still continuing to do really well. So around COVID, though, that's when my trajectory in Choose, I was able to do a lot of cool things in the company. And mentoring women, I think, was sort of one thing that I kind of realized I liked doing. I'm proud of the women that worked in our kids clubs, and I was able to come in and help get that aligned for the company to get started. And my very first hire, actually, she runs all of our clubs in New Mexico now. So it's pretty cool to be part of a company that does things the way that Choose has over the years, where they, really promote people from within and all those kinds of things. So I got to learn so much through that. So fast forwarding to COVID, and my husband decided to exit from the day in and day out of Choose. And I had already kind of pulled out of being in the day in and day out of Choose a little bit before he had having kids and stuff. I just couldn't maintain both. So anyways, found ourselves sort of like, what else did we want to do? And we decided to go into fitness again because we knew fitness, and opened a a local studio called Eat the Frog Fitness. It was under a franchise, and that ended up not going really well. But that's actually sort of where the meat of the story is that you're hoping to, I think, speaks to me about. It was the blooming of the Salty Goddess Network that really bloomed out of the ashes of sort of this crash and burn of this studio, that really one thing after the next was just not working. And I was maybe at the time, to your question about listening for God's, direction in my life, maybe ignoring and continuing to sort of beat down a pathway strong-headedly, and so I knew myself with that not working, and then redirecting and listening until I found myself sort of with this network. So
it's so good. There's so many nuggets I kind of want to pull out of that. Can you talk about, and you and I have had many conversations around that journey of having something that felt like a failure. And we know like now, right? Because you're on the other side of it, but we know that when you're faced with that, like the shame that kind of comes up, some of the like guilt of like, did I make the right choice? All of this sort of stuff. Can you speak into that and what that journey was like for you, and how you walked out of that? Because I think a lot of times people get stuck in those seasons.
Absolutely. And it was a really hard season. And I think that's how God sort of helped me. He surrounded me with these women, and I latched onto them. And I think that where it was hard was, Choose Fitness is really successful and done really well, but that was part of a team effort. And I love being part of a team. I'm great on teams, but this frog thing that we were doing was really just off on an island, my husband and I. So it felt even more like, oh my gosh, maybe we were only successful if we're part of with these other people. Maybe, we're not good enough on our own. And I guess there's some validity without God, that's kind of what happens. But I guess and then just this whole, building out something and then seeing sort of the odds shifting as it's happening. Like I was super bullish on it at the time on that niche of fitness doing well after COVID. So what I mean is COVID had isolated a lot of people. And I wanted to go into a niche within fitness that I know is very community based, which is those studios that are similar to like Orange Theory and F45, where they're really building strong communities. They're smaller. And I also, to me, that I knew it wasn't necessarily easier to run, but it was physically smaller. And there was one building that was local to my house and a school and stuff. So for a lot of reasons, it was enticing. Even the brand was Christian people that owned it. And so that was also enticing to me. Unfortunately, the brand itself didn't do as well as I thought it would do. And then that whole niche in general ended up suffering. People didn't go back into fitness the way that I thought they would. They didn't go across the board. Even our Choose Fitnesses were at 70%. Big box locations where you have those 40,000 square feet boxes, they filled back up again, but the smaller studios didn't. And so there was cost, that's part of it. And then also just people changed their behaviors. They started doing other things. But anyway, it was so hard to have this brand that I knew I never actually loved the branding itself. I liked the idea of Eat the Frog because it means doing a hard thing first and getting that out of the way. The concept was fine. And I really liked the program, but I found myself, with something that it just wasn't working. And so showing up over and over again and doing something, having to close it, all of those parts was just where you're pulling from the resilience of, having that faith and just knowing that it's the right thing to do, but that's totally. That's also where God's also simultaneously, you're only seeing or I was only seeing the failure, and he was overbuilding the network through me, but I wasn't necessarily open my eyes to what was happening there until, really I probably that last workout on that last day where I kind of had a moment with one of my members that was, very defining for me. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so there's also like within that, then you created and a Salty Goddess network emerged, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But Salty Goddess is such a like God-centered, gift-centered network, and it's just been like very aligned with like the different relationships you had nurturing it. I kind of want to I'm a little bit curious on your take around like a good idea versus a God idea, and like how to decipher when it is a good idea or really a God idea when you're like, okay, I'm just going to be obedient and do this, because there are so many like different opportunities and potentials out there. Like you said, Choose was like super successful, and you're like, okay, let's start something new. It's going to be great and it's going to be successful. And I think it's a really interesting thing for any woman that is really driven, super motivated. Most of the listeners on here, you kind of fall into that category. And so when you do something new and it's hard, it's even more frustrating because you're like, wait, I'm used to being good at my thing. So how do you decipher, whether it's a good idea or a God idea?
It's a really cool question. I think that even Eat the Frog was a God idea. And here's why. Even though I didn't like what happened, it still needed to happen. And God is really direct and explicit with me with the messaging. So I'm dyslexic. I'm like, you have to like really whack me on the head with things. So he'll like,
I always say like, God, tell me clear and in big, bold English.
yes, big, bold English. So Eat the Frog. So it was kind of like, Maica, here you are. You guys are we weren't out of Choose. We're still part of Choose. But if I wanted to do something with my time locally, I was going to have the bandwidth to do something else. And so it was like, I wanted to be in business locally and I wanted to help spread the kingdom. And so it was the way that and journaling and everything needed to do it was I needed to eat my frog. I just needed to splat out there. Literally was in a frog suit, splatting out. I didn't really know how to work Instagram that well. All the things. And so here I was wearing a ridiculous costume because I had ended up with, I built it. And then now I was still trying to sell this thing that I had no backup or marketing dollars for. So I bought this really cheap frog costume and went out and started getting attention. But what I was actually doing was building that network and that community of women that were the ones that ended up being the ones showing up for me over and over again when I needed them or when I was feeling really low. And that's where God gives you these communities, and you know that those are your people when you're about to walk in to the community that you've built, and you know that you're going to close this community. So you're crying in the parking lot and nobody knows that you're having that moment, but someone from this group calls you, and because they're so in tune, it's like there's you're praying about it, whatever, they knew to call you and give you that little push to help you put on, what you needed to do to get through that next, phase of, closing something down. But I think that it's a God idea when you just know that you want to do it. Like I felt that way with Eat the Frog, even though I crashed and burned. And so I still feel like without it, I don't have Salty Goddess, because Salty Goddess only happened because there were two things at play here. One was a passion inside to help women in business thrive, because I wanted to see more women in business doing things. And because I was one and I wanted to see more. And then I wanted to spread the kingdom and good things. And so I think when those two things are happening, it's more of a God idea, but it doesn't look the way you think it's supposed to look. Although I think God's plan for me to end up in the ball gown on a beach, representing what's meant to be like this idea of a goddess, which is just an idea of this like goddess-like energy that we have when we get together, that's supportive and loving and uplifting, is way more attractive on me than the frog costume. So
100%. If you're loving this conversation and it's sparking something inside of you, maybe it's time to share your own voice with the world. That's exactly why we created the Podcast Accelerator, to help leaders like you go from hidden to heard with a podcast that connects, inspires, and actually grows your business. We launched together in just a few months, and you'll have the system, support, and strategy to keep scaling and growing. Doors are open now, so the link to apply is in the show notes. We cannot wait to see you in there. That's so funny. Oh, it's such an image in my mind going through that. And did you feel like when you're going through those moments when you're like in the parking lot and crying, did you feel equipped to like deal with what you were dealing with?
No, not necessarily, except for I really was just going through the motions for some of those times. But I knew, I don't know, I could still feel something. But it was really sad. Closing it was super hard, but I knew something was coming though. And I think that in that, it was in that last workout being in there and having Julie Moss, who was hugging me after that workout and looking me in the eyes, saying to me, Maica, you don't always win. And Ray, that Julie Moss is an Ironman icon, and she is in the Hall of Fame for not winning. So here she is looking at me. She's 66 or 7 years old now, and I look at her very much as a mentor and someone consistently working out all these things. But here's God again through this human that I admire so much, who didn't win, telling me, you don't always win. But here she did, she got back up. And that's Julie's story is in 1982, she crawls across the finish line in front of about 30 million people watching to lose. So her body gives out before the finish line. She's in first place, and she does get passed by Kathleen McCarthy, who wins that race. Doesn't even know she won because everybody was so fixated on Julie, who gets back up and crosses the finish line in this very dramatic finish. And anyway, essentially crawls her way into the Hall of Fame by not winning. And so I just, in that moment, was like, I had a little bit of a block still with the network, where I felt like these women, something in my head was telling me they all needed to be business owners. And here I was, not a business owner now after that last workout. So I took my phone out and just asked Julie, who wasn't a business owner, but is so all these things, if she would be part of the network. And she said, yes, of course. And so she's been somebody within it that's been super help. Every single woman brings their different things to the table that are so important and valuable. So anyway, but it's moments like those where if I hadn't been showing up, if I had just, let it, I don't even know. Some people do that. They just like put a sign on there, whatever. They don't care about the people. They failed, and they just shrivel up. They don't want to look at it, and it's all done. And it's like, I had people that I owed, that I wanted to be there for. And, it was an emotional ride together. And that season of sadness that we were all in, because that community was going away, I needed to be there to close it with them. And because I was there for them, they've been there for me. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm just like welling up over here hearing this story. And it's like, I love that you just did not give any power like to the liar about like, oh, I should be ashamed or this or that. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna put the close sign up. I just love that you did not give that power away. And like, just like Julie, like crawling over that finish line and yeah, still becoming a Hall of Famer. Like, I totally see that in your story, and really in a lot of the women that do end up being a part of your network, and women outside of the network, that are just doing incredible things. It's because I feel like they have their own eat the frog moments. And so I want to kind of like hear a little bit about when you created Salty Goddess Network. I know you really wanted to focus on two things, and this kind of a biblical principle that you brought in, which is salt and light. Can you share a little bit more about that and what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was probably I go to Coastline Church right here in Encinitas, and I was probably a sermon, praying about it, building things and whatever. And it was just in that time that I was searching for the name of even what it was, because in that sermon that week was, Matthew 5:13, and it was, being talking about being salt and light, and really adding, the whole message just was one that just spoke to me in a way that I just knew it was like talking to me, with how I was meant to use this name, because we had already made up the name, like as a team and a group. And like I said, I'm very much like this team person. And so I wanted to keep it, but I do very much believe in Jesus and God. And so the salty goddess name can be a little confusing. And so being able to weave the salt with having it being biblically based made a lot more sense for me, And so, yeah, being salt and light. So I, over this necklace says salty in it. And it is just meant to be, a salt of the earth. You made salt. If you just think about the way my pastor explains it, is just that, it makes things taste better. And so it's like you're making the things better. And for other people and in the world. And so, and then being light, that's pretty self-explanatory, but I always have these in my thing, the pins, the little diamond, shine bright like a diamond. But that's the reason that there's the meaning there for me, or for us, that, know where it came from. And then the name Salty Goddess came from where we live in Encinitas. I was on Neptune Avenue, and Neptune's the god of the sea in the Roman mythology. So I was standing there going, well, he's the boy, who's the girl? And so there is his significant other's name is Salacia. Anyways, I'm not super into all the mythology stuff. So I just was like, okay, well, whatever, Salty Goddess. And then I could use the salts for that. So yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to just kind of wrap up our interview here. There's been so many beautiful gems and stories and just inspiring imagery. So thank you for sharing all of that. I'm curious, is there anything that you've like recently heard from heaven? And I'm curious if there's anything that you've heard in heaven recently. Is there any way that God's speaking to you right now about either like the direction of Salty Goddess, or even just, women in general, women in business? Is there anything that you've heard that you would like to share, with our listeners? Maybe it's about like unapologetically reclaiming something, or, part of your story is like making it over that like finish line of like closing something down and really standing strong and true in it. Yeah. What would you
I
like to
think
share as a final note?
Thank you for asking. Resilience and, the failure and resilience has always kind of been my story and theme. Right now, personally, I feel the messaging for me is really, you said reclaim, but yeah, doing some of that inner child work, and actually looking at, some areas where I maybe have abandoned myself a little bit to fit into, society, all the different things, and just sort of checking in again. I think as women, that's something that can be groomed, can be a yucky word sometimes, but there's something in society that we can be sort of, indoctrinated into, and I mentioned being a great team player and all of those things, but not taking it too far to where you're really abandoning yourself. And so that's where maybe in the past, I haven't had a good boundary there for my own self. And so that's been something that's been helpful to me. And even my daughter reflected back to me. We were talking about family and sort of how you have the hierarchy of you have God, and then your spouse, and then your kids and everything. But as she was explaining it back to me, I didn't even hear my own name, my own self in there. And it was just a little bit of a reminder to me sometimes that it's God first, and then your husband, and then your kids. But if you're not anywhere in that whole thing, you've got to just reevaluate if you've just overlooked somebody, And so that's, I think for me right now, that's probably the biggest thing that I'm hearing. And the more that I sort of step into my own listening to that, the louder I feel like his voice gets, and the more that I kind of know the next steps, or it's Salty Goddess or all of it. So, yeah.
Mhm. It's so good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was just last week actually was thinking very similar lines around how God was just speaking to me around getting to know myself more in the way that he sees me, and not
Mhm.
like not getting to know myself in the way that the world sees me, or even my family, but truly like how does God see me, and get to know myself even better through his eyes. And so I love that you just brought that up. I just love that concept of not abandoning the self no matter what. Like always just staying with yourself, and loving yourself, and loving your inner child too, being like, okay, little girl, or for me, I'm always like, little Rachel, you're doing so good. But it's something that I think we can easily abandon, especially when life takes over or circumstances take over, or when things get really tough. It's so easy to get judgmental on ourselves. So thank you so much for just bringing that message home for all of us today.
Thank you. Well, yes, thank you for having me. It's very special.
Absolutely. So where can people find you online if they want to get to know you more or follow more about what you're doing?
Yes, we have Salty Goddess Network. I don't know. I've got cards.
We'll put the link, like your Instagram link, in the show notes and everything.
Yeah, I know there's a website and an Instagram, but yes, it's an amazing group of really authentic, incredible women that all connect and just add value to each other in a lot of ways. So it's special. I'm very
So
proud of it.
special. Well, Maica, you are special. Thank you so much for being on here, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you, Ray. Loved this so much.
Your voice carries weight, not just for today, but for eternity. If this episode stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, speak it, let it ripple. If you're ready to launch a platform that amplifies your message and multiplies your impact, I'm here to help. Start your journey with the link in the show notes down below. Subscribe, leave a review, and remember, when you speak with fire, you don't just shake the earth, you echo in heaven.